Now, Smithy, before I throw to you, mate, I just want to let you know the ratings are in, and they're a record, an absolute record.
Here we go.
SEN across the board have broken their ratings record again for the second time this year.
Let's go.
With the captain's run also breaking records and doing extremely well on SEN as well, mate.
Well done. Congratulations, mate. You're anchoring this whole setup along with Alex. A big thank you to our listeners, though. They're the ones that we need to thank the most for tuning in every week. And especially, we had the week off last week.
We did.
The mid-season break. How are you feeling? Are you fresh?
Well, I actually,
pumped?
Funnily enough, Smithy, I actually did a podcast in memory. I just felt wrong. I had to do it. So I went to the Bloke Studios and I said, look, if Smithy's not going to do it, I'll go and do it. So I just did a little preview of the round, mate. How was your break?
Well done. Oh, it was good, mate. It was good. Spent some time with the family, of course. The kids were on school holidays. We went out bush. We did a little bit of camping and a little bit of farm work. So great fun. Just getting back down to the basics, you know?
Yep.
So good.
Back to the way
felt like you're a world away.
Yeah. Heading back into Origin, though. The Origin pressure cooker that is. It's a big difference to being out there living life free and the way we were supposed to. But, mate, tell me, Origin, Game 3, squads have been announced. How are you feeling with both squads?
Yep. Oh, I'm feeling good. I'm feeling good now. It took me a couple of days to get over that Game 2 walloping, particularly the first half, right? So that was just a complete annihilation. Greatest first half in Origin history.
Wow.
For the Blues. 34 to a donut.
Holy.
Wasn't great. It wasn't overly enjoyable to sit back and watch that unfold. But you do have to just stand up and applaud the efforts of that New South Wales side. They were just so clinical. So clinical. They outplayed the Maroons in all facets of the game. We clung a few points back. We clawed our way back a little bit in the second half, but I think it may have been a bit of a case of the Blues took the foot off the pedal a little bit. They knew they had the game sewn up, and it makes for an exciting decider next Wednesday.
Mate, have you ever been in this position before where Game 2 you've just been absolutely thumped and you've got a Suncorp decider?
Well, we've been beaten Game 2. I wouldn't say we were ever thumped. Very similar situation to 2015, this one is, where we beat New South Wales in Sydney Game 1 and then went down to Melbourne, played at the MCG, and we outplayed that game. We weren't beaten as heavily as the Maroons were this year, but we were beaten. And that year, that was the talk around this whole, Dad's Army. Like, they're gone. They're too old. They got to give it away. So, to be fair, there was a lot of pressure, from the media in particular, and a little bit of pressure on ourselves to go out there and perform. And so we went out there and we created a bit of history for ourselves as well. We went out and won 56-6. So that was the result in that third game. So, I'm not saying that that's going to be replicated this time around, but the Maroons have got to have that same mentality. Is that, hey, they've got a few people, to prove a point to, but most importantly, they got to prove a point to themselves.
Yeah,
that they're good enough to go out there and play against this New South Wales side that was so dominant in Game 2.
Now, the biggest talking point, or one of the biggest talking points, is the big fella Fafita left out again. Capewell gets promoted from bench to starting. With Sewer dropping out. What are your thoughts on the selection decision?
Yeah, well, it's been the big talking point for the Queensland squad, hasn't it, over the first three games, is that there's been no Dave Fafita. And, his club form's been pretty good. But, Billy's come out on multiple occasions. Well, it's been after every, naming of his squad for all three games and had to explain why he's not there. And I think he's explained it quite well. He just said, look, Dave's gave himself some standards or made some standards about his game last year that he hasn't quite got to this year, and there'll be parts of his game that Billy believes that could make him vulnerable at this level, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. I felt it was a little bit unfair that Kurt Capewell got asked about it in his presser on I think it was Monday. It's got nothing to do with him. He's been selected on what Billy believes he can bring to the football side, and that's what he needs to concentrate on. But, look, for me, it's it's not a big one. You know, I think there's certainly parts of Dave Fifita's game that could really give some issues to New South Wales. But there's also parts of his game, and most of that is off the football that could possibly play into the Blues' hands as well. So I think that's where Billy's coming from, is that, you know, he's gone for a guy like Kurt Capewell that's, you know, that works hard on and off the football, and that he can rely on. So that's really where I see it, and that's what he's gone for. A little bit different looking squad. He's gone back to Kalyn Ponga on the bench, so he's got a genuine outside back on the bench. Really interested to see how he's going to use him, and whether there'll be an opportunity for, well, there's going to be an opportunity, isn't there, for Walsh and Ponga to be on the field at the same time. We all know what Kalyn Ponga can do. He had a long layoff, 12 weeks in fact, and then come out on the weekend and had some brilliant touches for the Knights against the Raiders. So whether he comes on and plays in the middle, or he gets a bit of a roving role to jump into the back line and play sort of wherever he wants to, we'll just have to wait and see.
Yeah, I think that, you know, the Fifita one, obviously you look at the attack that Fifita can do, and it's very easy to get caught up in those highlights. And don't get me wrong, I probably would have selected Fifita myself if I was the coach.
Yep.
But I do think that people are not really taking into consideration that, I don't think points are Queensland's concerns right now.
No.
I think it's defensively, their biggest concern is stopping the rolling ruck of New South Wales, and Kurt Capewell is notoriously a really good defender. Now, you could go and look at stats and go, okay, well, hang on a sec, this player has better tackle efficiency than this player. But first of all, tackle efficiency it can be a bit misleading, because line speed is almost like 80% of the battle in regards to good defensive lines. So for Kurt Capewell, line speed, he's one of the best in the competition when it comes to edge back rowers. And he might have 3 or 4 more missed tackles, but that's because he's got up really quickly and he's made the man go back inside. And so there's all these like little things that you probably have to watch the game really, really closely, as Billy Slater does, to pick up on them. And it's not as clear cut as looking at a bloke's stats and going, well, this guy's stats say this and this guy's stats say that. So that's coming from a guy that would have picked Fifita, but it's just, you know, kind of explaining to the audience that there are so many things Billy would be looking at.
Well, mate, everything that gets spoken about, say, in the media and all of these magazine rugby league shows, is that it's all the highlight stuff, right? And so, as you mentioned, Billy looks at stuff much, much deeper than that the everyday fan doesn't look at, right? We look at the big runs, we look at the tackle breaks, we look at the barnstorming carries where, you know, you're sort of running over the top of 2 and 3 players and scoring tries from close range and all that sort of stuff. That's all great. That looks fantastic. But as you said, mate, like when you look at it at a deeper level, and I'm telling you, like I'll guarantee you, there's not another single person involved in this Origin series that has watched more footage of individuals than Billy Slater. I'm telling you right now. So when he makes a decision, for me, I'm not going to sit there and question why he has someone in or out of this football side.
Mate, it's I cannot wait. Oh, my God, going through the Suncorp, it's the best. It is the best. Mate. Now, we've actually got some audio from Billy Slater here in regards to the selection of Kalyn Ponga.
Unfortunately for Kalyn, you know, the last couple of years he hasn't been available. You know, it was game 3, you know, 2022, the last time he was available playing here at Suncorp. So, it was great to see him back on the field yesterday, and he hadn't really skipped a beat. Obviously done a lot of work, you know, at training and a lot of physical work to get himself in the condition that he's in. And we feel that, you know, that's the best thing for the footy team to have him in the side.
What do you reckon, Smithy? Now, the questions are, first of all, how will he be used? And then the negative side of this all is, do you feel there is a concern that the bench for Queensland is a bit small and may struggle?
Yeah, well, it could be, right? It could be. If they don't aim up defensively, I think there could be some real issues there, because you've got, you know, sort of Ben Hunt, Harry Grant and Kalyn Ponga all in the same footy side. And I'm assuming that Billy would, at some stage during the game, those 3 players may be on the park all together. And then you sort of think, well, okay, well, how does that all fit into one? Where do they all play? You know, so it's a really difficult one. And trying to think about, either Harry Grant or Ben Hunt being on the bench at the same time as Kalen Ponga when you want to try and get those guys on the field. Like, if you have those three guys on the field, they're three of the most dangerous ball players in the game. Mm. So when you look at it from that way, like, that's a huge positive for Queensland. But at the same time, you got to have fair share of the football. And you've got to have good field position. It's something that they didn't have in Game 2, and Billy Slater he's already spoken about that. One thing that he took away from that second game is that, it's a good lesson for everyone. Well, he already knew it, but it's a nice reminder to say, hey, listen, you can't win football games if you don't have the ball.
Yeah.
So whether that be through your discipline while you're defending, they gave away a few set restarts. They gave away the first 4 penalties of the match, and they were just camped down their own end. And then also, when you do get the opportunity to get the ball, you can't be making errors with the football. You got to make the most of your opportunities. So I think that will be the build-up of the makeup of their preparation and the mindset that they need to take into this game. How those three players fit into their game plan, it's anyone's guess. But I'm sure Billy will have an idea of how that rotation will work. And how he wants to get Kalen Ponga into the game. Because we've seen the other night, right? As I mentioned, he had a few touches against Canberra where they were just coming out of his backfield. It's like he had spiders on him.
Yeah.
Like, they couldn't get a hand on him.
Crazy.
So imagine, if they're able to work their way into the game and have, half share of the football, half share of the field position, and all of a sudden you've got a fatiguing New South Wales side. Imagine having Walsh and a Ponga on the field at the same time.
Yeah.
That's nightmares for defence.
Yep.
Nightmares.
Yeah. It's and then also you're probably going to have Harry Grant with them. So around the ruck, you've got the most devastating attacking half in the game with KP and Walsh as well. It'll just be, nightmare fuel for defences. If you had gun to your head, when do you reckon he gets on?
Oh, geez, I reckon. Well, depending on the game, right? If it's all going smoothly, I think he holds him back.
Okay.
I think he holds him back maybe until the second half, or everything going well.
We've got some audio from Micah Maguire on Bradman Best Selection.
Bradman's been on fire the last sort of month, so it's nice to bring him in and replace the big fella Latrell.
What do you like about Bradman, mate?
One, he's actually been there before. He was probably one of the best players in the last game last year. And he's shown that he can definitely play at that level, but also too just the way he plays. I obviously had a lot of thoughts about him before we all started the series, just where things were at. But he was out injured, so it's nice to see him back running around and playing really well.
There you go, Michael Maguire is discussing why he selected Bradman Best. Obviously, I think Suaalii would have been available. Then you've got Matty Burton, that has been 18th man 1,000 times over the last couple of years. What do you reckon, Smithy? Right, wrong call, not sure?
Well, no, I don't mind it. He's a powerful centre. I think they've tried to go as close as they can to Latrell Mitchell, right? Like, he's one of a kind, Latrell. So you're never going to get a like for like, but it's closest thing to it is Best. Like, he's big, powerful runner, pretty good defensively as well. So it's going to be another handful for the Queensland right edge, to try and handle the strength of Bradman Best. He's been in pretty good touch too for Newcastle. He's got an issue though with the hamstring, which we've learned about. So, but he's been given the all clear, I think, hasn't he?
Yep. All good to go.
Like, even he said, like, he's good to go. He just might miss the first couple of sessions and then he'll be back into it. But I don't mind the selection. I think they could have gone with Matt Burton as well. I think he would have been a pretty good option. He's been in great form for the Bulldogs. But I know he's playing 6. But that weapon of his with the kick, with the big spiral bomb kick, could really put Queensland under pressure. But they've gone for Bradman, and I think it's a pretty good selection. I don't mind it at all. I think it's still another very strong outfit. Very strong outfit. When you look at Game 2 and what Latrell did, like, he didn't have to do a whole heap. But when he got the opportunities to do things, he made Queensland pay. He had a nice flick pass to Brian To'o to set him up. Like, he scored a try of his own, and he was pretty sound defensively as well. I think just his presence was the biggest positive for New South Wales for Game 2, not just during the 80 minutes, but the whole build-up, Latrell being in camp. So a little bit different with Bradman there, and, doesn't have the same sort of, I guess, aura about him, but, that's his regular position that he plays. He's in pretty good form for Newcastle. And, as Michael Maguire spoke about, his debut match last year in Game 3, he was in the top 3 players on the field. So, I'm sure he'll go into this one pretty confident, although it's going to be a very different atmosphere for him, this one. Suncorp decider going in 1-1. Last year, it was just, there was no pressure. The series was gone and he was playing in front of his home crowd. A little bit different for him this year, but he's in good form, and I'm sure that's all he's thinking about going into this match.
Yeah, I like it. I think it's the right decision, not because I don't think Matty Burton is an incredible player and he offers his own unique set of attacking weapons. He absolutely does. What I like about it is that Michael Maguire has made it extremely clear what kind of team he wants to be, and that is a big, extremely physical side. Yep. And that's what Bradman Best is. He's an extremely physical, big centre, very explosive. And I think that it just reinforces the messaging that Michael Maguire is sending is that if you're on this team, you're extremely physical and you're there to bully the opposition.
Well, it's exactly the way they played, didn't they, mate, in Melbourne? That's how they played.
Yep. And so, in Melbourne, they tread the line perfectly. They were really, really smart. They did quite a lot of things that at Clubland you get pinged for.
Oh, yep.
But they really played it well. They said, this is Origin. So what we're going to do is we're going to push that line and we're going to dare Ashley Klein to do something about it. He didn't, which is fine. That's Origin. Yep. We love that. That's what we want. Right. We want to see. Right. But it was smart because it's going, if Klein does pull us up quickly, and look, I don't think Klein was ever going to go too harsh in Game 2 because of what happened in Game 1. It's just a natural human reaction to the fallout.
Yep, exactly.
You see it in grand finals. You go back to that Penrith Broncos grand finals, and Smithy, you can speak about it better than anyone. That first 20 minutes is a real good way to test, can we take things a bit further than we usually do? If we can, we're going to do it all game.
Yep. Well, you set a standard, don't you? You set the standard for the night. So you test the referee out early and see what he's going to blow penalties for or what he's going to let go, and then that's it for the night. So, yeah, you're right. Like, what New South Wales did was, they pushed the line a couple of times and they got away with it, and fair game. And the thing that they did better than Queensland was Queensland didn't do that. They didn't test the referee at all. Now, I know they may have been a little bit gassed from the amount of work that they did early on, but they didn't ask any questions where they pushed the boundary of the officials. They didn't do that. Whereas you look at was it Liam Martin, he tipped Cotter on his head, penalty. That's one of the things, that you mentioned. Head high, Clubland, probably both of those tackles, they go to the sin bin for 10 minutes.
For sure.
But, I don't mind it. Like, we're all aware of the officiating is very different in State of Origin, and particularly off the back of the Suoli'i send-off in Game 1. That wasn't going to happen again.
No.
Unless there was an absolute...
similar shot.
Similar shot where someone got their head absolutely taken off. Yeah, there wasn't going to be people spending time on the sideline. They just wanted to let the players decide it. And I'll tell you what, Game 3, it's going to be even more that way. Like, I reckon the referee will almost put his whistle in his pocket.
Yeah.
And just go, look, I don't want to have any bearing on the result here. I just want these two teams to settle it out themselves. And if I can help it, I'm just going to leave my whistle out of my mouth.
Well, what Adam G did in the grand final, he just went, boys, we're going to sort it. And I think that I if I have to be critical of one thing that Queensland did, is not cluing onto that quick enough. You go back to that grand final, when I was at the game, you could see the Broncos realise, oh, hang on a sec, we need to start pushing the envelope ourselves, and they did, and they went on this crazy 20-minute run where they scored all those points. And I think that Queensland, they'll be going into Game 3 being more clued on to going, okay, if we get tipped on our head and there's a penalty, just a penalty, no 10 in the bin, we need to return serve. Not specifically tip on someone's head, but we need to be aggressive like that.
You know what, mate? You look over the time of rugby league, right? The last 100 years, there hasn't been one successful footy side that hasn't pushed the boundaries.
Yeah,
hasn't been one. If you don't want to push the boundaries as far as the rules are concerned and test the referees out, then you won't succeed. It's just the way it is. It's the way all elite sport is. If you're not willing to test the referees out with all the the rules and the officiating and all that sort of stuff, and some people view it these type of things and say, oh, it's grubby, they were bullies and this sort of stuff. Well, maybe they are, maybe they're not. All they're doing is they're pushing the boundaries of what you are allowed to do on the field. You know what I mean? And there's been no team that has been successful or won big matches like Origin deciders or grand finals, any of the big matches without pushing the boundaries.
Yeah. It's just almost a constant reminder, this is an extremely physical game. It's as close to like physical boxing or MMA as you can get. To suggest that physicality won't cross the line at times, if you aren't willing to go to that place, you will be dominated. It is that simple.
I'll tell you one man that wouldn't mind going there. I know there's a couple of madmen in that New South Wales side, but Mitch Barnett.
Oh,
thoughts on his
holy!
inclusion?
I love it. And look, I think Olakau'atu did nothing wrong to be dropped.
No,
but I think fast track Suncorp, Mitch Barnett's leg speed is perfect. Perfect.
Yep. Well, it's great. It's a great selection, I feel, for them. Barnett being on the bench because he's playing regularly now in the ruck, so he starts front row. I think he got through 80 minutes on the weekend.
Mate, his stats on the weekend.
Unbelievable.
His stats on the weekend were actually insane. 50+ tackles, 200+ meters.
Yep. So he's got a great motor, but also he can play back row as well.
Yep.
So you've got Connor Watson who's going to play a similar role. I think. Look, if both teams have 50-50 share of the footy, I think he might get on in the first half this time around and might play a little bit of 9, give Robson a rest. If he's not playing there, he'll be playing as that extra forward, maybe sort of a link man for the halves in the middle. Then you've got Yo who will play, go on and play in the ruck. Spencer Leniu will play that similar role, that impact role where he just gets on and just tries to skittle defenders with the football and be ultra aggressive defensively. But then you've got Barnett who covers, as I said, he can go on as an extra front row forward, or, if Angus Crichton or Liam Martin need a spell, he's perfect. He can just slot straight over there. Also, too, you've got the option of moving Cam Murray to the back row.
Yeah. Some, I guess, I wouldn't say alarming, but definitely concerning as a Queenslander. Harry Grant, his sternum, there's been questions around. He actually hasn't played any rugby league since the last game.
Yeah.
If he doesn't pass a fitness test, what do you think happens there?
Well, there's conflicting reports, can't be right, so about his fitness. So some are saying, oh, no, he's good to go. He's fit, he's had a rest, he's right to go. He's had a sternum issue, right? So that's why he's missed a couple of games over the last month. But then there's other reports saying he's going to face a rigorous fitness test coming up. I'd assume that's either today sometime or possibly tomorrow afternoon. I think they've got a session tomorrow afternoon planned. So it's possibly then. So, mate, if he fails that physical test, then I just think that Reid Marnie comes straight in. I think he comes straight in, and I think he'll start him. To be honest, I don't think they'll hold him back on the bench. He doesn't come off the bench. I don't think has he ever played off the bench? I'm not too sure. I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think so.
I think he'd just put him straight in to start, and I think Billy would just say to Reid Marnie, "Hey mate, get out there and you give us all you got." If that's 30 minutes, great. If that's 50 minutes, if it's 60 minutes, whatever it is, you just go hard. We got Ben Hunt on the bench who's ready to go. But he's a guy that plays every week 80 minutes, gets through a mountain of work. This will be a step up for him that he in speed and intensity of the match, what he's experienced ever before in his career. But I think he'll handle it. So we'll just have to wait and see. I think in the next 24 hours it'll become more clear of what direction they go in. If they pass the test, if Harry Grant passes the test, he'll be playing. And then the question is whether they start with Harry or they start with Ben Hunt like they've done the first two. But I think having Reid Marnie there, he's a pretty handy backup.
Now, we've got some audio from Michael Maguire towards Gordon Tallis. He's taken a few shots, Michael Maguire. He had a little shot at Queensland because on day one, Queensland, a lot of players were arriving late, so they weren't available to media. Michael Maguire basically said, well, if that's the way they want to do things, we're the people's team, essentially. But he's also had a little crack at Gordon Tallis after game 2 said he didn't like the way Reece Walsh and DCE were treated.
Wanted to thank Gordy. He actually thought I played against him. So, but yeah, look, at the end of the day, they've got their own opinions. But I guess, when you live in glass houses, we had a player walk off the field and certain things were said. So people were willing to say things. And I guess, we all, I love my players, so I'm going to look after them.
There you go.
He's gone the glass houses again.
Mate, double glass houses. Absolutely love it. This is rugby league. So Gordon Tallis has responded. And part of the response was on NRL 360. And he said he wouldn't know. He never played Origin. I saw Madge at the airport at Melbourne. It's so good. It's refreshing. As a Tigers coach, he had no personality.
Jeez.
Now, for the listeners, that sounds extremely harsh. But go and watch Gordy say it. He literally says, "Do you want me to keep it going?" So it's a bit of banter. I'm pretty sure Michael Maguire and Gordon Tallis are mates. But I do love it. I absolutely love it. What do you reckon, Smithy?
Wow. Oh, it's great. It's good to sit back and just listen to those two boys go at it. He doubled down, Madge, on the glass houses thing, and then Gordy's never going to back down.
No,
ever.
No.
Mate, Gordy. I know Gordy. He's never going to back down from a bit of a brouhaha, a war of words. We all know he doesn't mind throwing them too. So, not that he's going to get in a fight with Michael Maguire. That's just silly talk from myself. But look, it makes for a nice build up. It builds up the whole feeling between the two states. And I think Madge is smart in what he's doing. Really, he's doing we may have mentioned this before, but he's doing a little bit of a Wayne Bennett, isn't he?
Yeah.
He's just taking all the focus away from his footy side. Most of the talk around this build-up has been around, this glass houses and Gordy's fired back and this and that. Is Billy under pressure? And there's no talk about the teams. There's none.
Yeah.
It's a masterstroke by Madge in his first series as coach. But hey, at the end of the day, the only thing that matters, like no matter what happens in the next 7 days, in the media, all the talk and the headlines and all that sort of stuff, the only thing that really matters is what both teams produce next Wednesday night in the 80 minutes of football that's played. Nothing else matters.
Yeah. It's I love it. I think it's really good. I do. There was a few years where it was, everyone tried to not say much because they didn't want to draw headlines, but I really enjoy it. It does. At the end of the day, the Blues players and also the Queensland players, they have to back that chat up.
Absolutely.
Because you come out looking pretty silly if you're talking up before a game and you get absolutely obliterated on the field. So it's going to be spiteful. It's going to be, I think, the comments in the media about Queensland being bullied. I do think that's going to sting a few prides in the Queensland camp. Surely, a few egos getting.
They'd have to. Imagine playing in that forward pack and being told you got bullied and pushed around, and now you're back on your home turf. Like it's, they have to stand up, don't they? They just have to.
Yep.
Like, there's no other option for them. In game 2, right, there was 2 teams out there. One team needed to win. One team wanted to win.
Yeah.
Right? The team that needed to win, they went out with a different mentality to the team that wanted to win the game, and it showed. It showed particularly in the first half. And that was the difference. Now, different story. It's now or never for both sides.
Jason Riles has been handed a 4-year contract at the Parramatta Eels head coach. From the start of next season, Trent Barrett to continue as interim coach until the end of this season. The Eels will now go on a retention drive. The list of players off contract at the end of 2025 can start talking to the other clubs on November the 1st. Cartwright, Gutherson, Hopgood, Lane, Madison, Offengawe, Russell, Sivo, Dunster, Widemu, Greg. Blaze Talangi is still weighing up his options, but he has not signing a 3-year extension offered in May. The Knights and Dragons are reported to be interested in him. Mate.
Wow.
Speak to me, Smithy. You've had some experience with Riles, haven't you?
Yeah. Well, it's a big signing I have. I played alongside Rolesy at the end of his career at the Melbourne Storm, and then also he rejoined the club a couple of years later as an assistant coach. So spent a fair few seasons working alongside Jason Riles, and I think it's a great appointment for the Parramatta Eels. There's no doubt that they've done their due diligence in appointing the head coach. They interviewed several budding coaches. I think Trent Barrett was one, a guy that's assistant and now caretaker coach at the club right now. Josh Hannay, of course, an up-and-comer, assistant coach at Cronulla, assistant coach with the Queensland Maroons, and is held in high regard in both football sides by many, many people. But I think Jason Riles was given the nod just because of the experience that he has in the game, both as a player and as an assistant, and he's worked under a couple of very, very good coaches in Craig Bellamy and Trent Robinson. And then on top of that, he spent some time with English rugby as well, with Eddie Jones, and knowing that's an elite system that they have, known globally in rugby. But look, I think it's fantastic. It's a big job, Kempy. It's a huge job coaching the Parramatta Eels because they're one of the biggest clubs in the country, and along with that comes expectation and standards around results and where he's going to take this football side going into the future. It's good to see that they've backed him with a 4-year deal though. Because instead of going, look, mate, we'll give you a 2-year deal, see how it goes. They've said, no, mate, look, we're going to back you in. Here's a 4-year deal. Let's see what you can bring to the footy club.
Yeah, I might sound a bit too simplistic, but almost looking at it from a purely, as simple as you can get, I'd be looking at like the Melbourne Storm wanted him. That's almost enough for me. If the Melbourne Storm, after Craig Bellamy, I know it wasn't a locked in or a certain thing, but, reports around the track would say that Riles was kind of brought in to potentially take over from Bellamy if he did, move on.
Well, I think that was the plan, mate.
Yeah.
I think that was the plan when he left. So he left the Roosters halfway through last year to take up that offer to go to Melbourne. Yeah. And so when Craig Bellamy decided that he was going to go around again as head coach for 2025, I think that's when Jason sort of said, well, I come down here on the assumption that he was going to finish up this year. Now that he's going on, and the Parramatta job became available, I think he just threw his hat in the ring and he's come out trumps.
And I really like it. I guess the question is with Riles, does he completely blow the place up? He's got a 4-year deal, so he's got time if he wanted to rebuild. Or does he go somewhere in the middle? Now, I look towards the Warriors and I look towards the Bulldogs. What was so interesting about that is you had 2 assistant coaches, both from the Penrith Panthers, that took 2 completely opposite directions when it came to taking over the club. Webster went to the Warriors and said, I look at this roster and I said, you know what? I'm going to get the best out of this roster. Ciraldo went and said, nah, this roster does not suit what I believe I need to do. And he completely cleaned the whole roster out. What do you reckon needs to happen at the Eels, or what do you think he will do?
Well, I think there's got to be some changes to their list, doesn't there? It's been a list that's been put together and has been operating now for the last few seasons and hasn't really done much outside of their grand final against Penrith a few seasons ago. Like, they haven't really fired a shot. I believe they should be operating much, much more efficiently than what they are. Like, they're a better side than what they're showing us this year again. Sitting 16th. When you look at their list, do you agree with me there, Kempy? Like, when you look at their lineup, they're a better football side than sitting 16th.
Oh, mate.
In this comp.
Like, I know a lot of people like to point to key players being injured. There are plenty of clubs with key players injured that aren't at the bottom of the table. We're talking about a side that still has origin-level front rowers, still has one of the best number 6s in the competition in Dylan Brown. Yep. Their forward pack with a Madison, your Lanes. Like, this is a bloody good side on paper still.
Well, you look at Melbourne, look at Penrith. Like, they've had injuries to key position play. Like, Nathan Cleary's hardly played a game this year. Cam Munster's hardly played a game this year. Like, they've got a lot of young players in there filling the void and playing really well. Look at the Dolphins. Yeah. And the challenges they've faced this year with injuries and suspensions and whatnot, they're still sitting in the top 8 and doing a fantastic job. So when you look at the caliber of players that they have, they really should be doing better than what they are. I know they've had the issues with some dramas with the coaches, and Brad Arthur was released from his contract mid season, which is not ideal for a footy club and not ideal as a player. To lose your coach and then have someone come in and sort of possibly have different ideas on the way you want to play your football. So you've got to change all that stuff up. So it's a matter of and I'm sure Jason is starting some planning right now for particularly next year, but future years as well, is that what does he believe he can do? Can he turn this squad around, this current squad around, and say, look, yeah, righto, I want to try and retain most of those players that are coming off contract? Or does he say, look, no, we need some mass changes and start looking elsewhere where there's some guys coming off contract, particularly in those key positions, to say, look, I think this place needs a freshen up, and I think these players here are the ones to get the job done for us.
Yeah, if outside looking in, I think you look at that spine and you go, look, this spine there's a great spine to work with. Now, granted, let's assume they're all on a pretty good wicket in regards to they're not overpaid. Like, there's not a single player that's on like 1.5 or whatever. To my understanding, it's a pretty well balanced spine monetarily.
Yep.
And so it's not like it's completely breaking their salary cap. I'd be looking at that and going, okay, we've got a great spine. I'd be putting all my eggs in that basket. Then I'd be looking towards basically squad depth. So when Mitchell Moses get injured, we should absolutely not be expecting Dylan Brown to just jump in and play 7. We should have a veteran journeyman 7 in Queensland or New South Wales Cup ready to go.
Yep.
And I think that they either need to fast track the young Arthur in this next preseason that comes back in, if he's ready. Now, you don't want to rush it and ruin him.
Yep. Matt
Arthur.
Yep.
Arthur. I do think if they've got too much money in specific players in their forward pack, they may need to make the tough decision of allowing one to explore his options elsewhere. Not because, one of them is playing poorly or the other, more just because it just unbalances the salary cap to have two, forwards on big coin.
Yep. Well, surely Blaze Talangi's got to be high on their priority list.
Oh, you'd have to assume so. I mean, the only way that I think that he may not be is the fact that they go, okay, we've got Lomax coming to the club. Blaze Talangi, can he be a centre winger? Maybe he can, but his best position is probably fullback. So I guess the question will be, A, are you going to move Gutho? I still think Gutho's easily the best fullback at the club, but let's say you're going to move him.
Yep.
You move Gutho to centres, but then you have to ask the question, okay, well, Gutho is on a big wicket. Do we want to be paying our centre fullback money? I think that's probably going to be the hardest decision for him.
How old is Gutho?
I think he'd be like about 30 now, 29.
Have to be. So he's probably, I'm not
29.
I don't want to put a limit on someone's, sort of career, but he's getting towards the back end, right? So do you the conversation you've got to have with Talangi is to say, look, mate, long term, you're our number one. You're our number one. But if you can commit to the footy club for us and just bide your time, play on the wing, give us a couple of years on the wing, and you might find yourself with the number one jersey in a couple of years. I think that's the conversation you've got to have. But it is a juggling act, like you said. To retain him, you're going to have to pay some big dollars, because I'm sure there's clubs out there that would offer him the opportunity, to play number one and offer him big dollars.
Yeah. It's a really, really tough call for Eels. They've got to. This is where your roster list managers come into play. Of that really, when a young player comes through, it's so important that roster, list managers have a strong relationship with the player, but also their family.
Yep.
To build the trust, to be able to look them in the eye and say, if you give me a year or two where you have to play on the wing, you will be the fullback. The concern that Blaze Talangi would be sitting there going, how many times have we heard clubs make promises to players, and then something happens, and all of a sudden I'm stuck on the wing for the rest of my contract.
Yep.
And so it's going to be a really hard balance to make sure that there's enough trust for them, because, as I said, unless Gutho's body is breaking down, which we've heard mixed reports, like he looks fine to me. I still think he's a bloody good fullback, but unless he's breaking down, I still do think Blaze Talangi is 1 or 2 seasons away from being well-rounded enough to take his spot purely on form.
Yep. Well, mate, like how many games in is he?
Oh, mate, he'd be
plays, like
10
what, a
games
dozen?
max. Yeah.
Yeah, 10 or 12 games in, so like he's a rookie still.
Oh,
Like he's still fresh to the game. Like there's so much you can learn. I think sometimes you can get a little bit sort of carried away and overexcited, when you're a young guy and thinking, like there's greener grass somewhere else, When you look at this footy club, like and you mentioned that spine, Kempy, with Gutherson, Moses and Dylan Brown, like that's a premiership quality spine.
yeah, absolutely.
That's a premiership quality spine. So, if you can just get some soldiers around them that are consistent and work hard and they want to get out there and make a difference every game that they play, well, these other three, they can put you in a position to win a lot of matches. And, so for Blaze Talangi, like he's just got to, as a young guy, I know it's really difficult because you see a lot of young guys coming into the game now. They want it all right now.
Yeah.
Like I want it. I want the big contract. I want to play this position. I want to do that. That's all good, but you got to think long term, like the big picture, and how do I make the most out of getting a long successful career.
So where do the Sharks sit after their loss on the weekend to the Titans in Coffs Harbour? Not only did they go down to the Titans, but they also have lost Nico Hines. They're still inside the top four, but having lost 3 straight versus Dolphins, Bulldogs, Titans, host the Tigers before clashes with the Cowboys, Rabbitohs. First of all, before we get into the Hines, what do you reckon with the Sharkies, mate? What's going on here?
Well, they're struggling, aren't they? They're just, I can't put my finger on it because the first half of this year they were unbelievable. Like they haven't looked like dropping out of the top 4, but they've really, really struggled to find a way to win footy games at the moment. Their last victory coming in round 14 against the Bronx, which was a solid win. They were a little bit off the pace in the first half, but they come home like a wet sail in the second 40 minutes, and were very good. Then they went down in that really strange. Remember that high scoring game against the Dolphins?
Yeah.
Down at Shark Park, the first time that the Dolphins had ever won a game of footy in Sydney, where they let out I think it was 22-point lead to the Dolphins, fought their way back. Nico Hines had the kick from the sideline after the bell to send it to Golden Point and missed. They went down by 2, and then they've struggled since. They have struggled since. And I'll tell you what, mate, like Nico Hines out, he's been a huge part of their success over the last couple of years and he's a focal point of their attack. I don't know where their points come from now. I just don't know where their points come from.
Yeah,
I've got real concerns for them.
Yeah, with the Nico Hines situation, I think actually personally, it's going to sound a bit crazy here, but purely selfishly from Nico's perspective, I actually think this time away might actually be good for him. You know, he's had a huge few years, like so much pressure and people trying to bring him down, and he's been in a bit of a form slump over the last... Now, when I say form slump, he hasn't been playing terribly. He just hasn't been at the heights that we know he can. And I just think just to move away from the headlines for a little bit is going to be really good for him to reset. But the Sharks are they're in a better position than the Broncos for sure, but they're in a similar-ish position where it's like, all right, boys, our job is to stay in touch with the top 8 until Nico gets back. Like, we need to make sure that when he does come back, we still actually have some footy ahead of us to play. Now, they have proven it. They have gone down to the Storm, Melbourne, and beaten the Storm without Nico. So they've shown they can get it done. I'm just getting a little bit concerned about their confidence being rattled over the last month of footy. And on top of all of that, the teams that they've lost to, out of all of them, I know the Dolphins and the Bulldogs are up at the top of the table, but, heading into those games, the Sharks were pretty strong favourites. And so I just wonder when they get up against, your Roosters, your Storm again, your Penrith again, how will they go when, I'm sure they're hoping to push for a premiership this year or at least go deep into the finals. It's just all about getting out of this kind of form slump that they're in.
Yeah, most definitely in a form slump. And they're a good enough side to make finals this year. I just don't know where they're going to finish though, Kempy. Particularly without with Nico being there for the next 8 weeks. Like, I don't know if they maintain that top 4 spot. You know, and particularly if they go down this week to West Tigers, that really puts their top four credentials in jeopardy. It really does. Because after that, they then have to travel. Well, they have a bye. Then they got to travel to North Queensland to take on the Cowboys. And then they've got a resurgent Rabbitohs as well. So if they lose, then they could potentially lose the next three. Then they're in all sorts of drama.
Yeah.
All sorts of drama.